and it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
You know, there's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer really standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Please remember to visit the website podcastufo.com for past episodes, blogs, and forums. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is Martin Willis, your host. And we have Alejandro Rojas coming up in just a minute. Our guest tonight is Ron James. He's going to be talking on some UFO-related, ET-related videos he's been involved in over the years. And thank you for your support, for all the supporters out there. And you can support the show for $1 a month or more. And that information's right on our website. And that's podcastufo.com. And just a couple shout-outs real quickly for a couple of new $10 supporters. We have Greg. Thanks so much, Greg. And we have Dan that is supporting for $10 a month. Thanks, both you guys. And we are, you know what? I decided to do, anyone who's a $10 supporter or more gets a free T-shirt. That's what I'm going to do from now on. If you want to become a $10 supporter, I will gladly send you a T-shirt, and maybe even if you live in somewhere, as long as you live on the planet, I will send you a T-shirt. If you live off planet, I have to think about it. But that's it for right now, and you can jump in the chat room at podcastufo.com and ask our guest upcoming some questions. For now, we have the news with the one, the only Alejandro Rojas. What's going on there, bud?
Hey, that's me.
That's you. Yeah.
UFOs are what's going on, buddy.
That's good to hear. Is there some activity?
There is some. Yeah, because if there wasn't, then I would be like, I've got nothing to say. Yeah, and out of a job. Yeah. But luckily there is something to say. So, yeah, the first story I want to talk about is kind of neat. It's this lady who's a hotel clerk at this resort at the first in Hawaii, in Volcano Beach. Florida. I don't know why I said Hawaii. But she works at the Ocean Sands Beach Inn. Beautiful place. Oh my gosh. The pictures here, it's blue. It's the beaches just look wonderful. I want to be there so bad. It's making me really want to kind of take off. But she gets UFO reports from her guests. So I guess she feels that there are a lot of UFOs being seen out there. And she spoke with the news, First Coast News, and they did this news segment on her. And we've got this video of it posted on the site. So it's kind of neat. She even provided them with some video that guests have provided her. And most of the guests don't want to really go on record as saying that they've seen UFOs. But she says often they see light hovering overhead, and people get frightened. She said in December, some people called and said they had seen some lights coming in. They said that one acted like it was distressed and was going up and down while one hovered and then darted off. So just really weird behavior. Some people have told her that they're probably Chinese lanterns, but she says that, they don't really act like Chinese lanterns would, because they seem to kind of be zipping and zooming and doing really weird stuff. So it's a neat video that was posted by First Coast News, and we've got a little story on that. Roger Marsh found this and posted it on our site, so people got to check it out.
I wonder if they could be Chinese lanterns in distress.
It could be.
Yeah, you never know.
What happens when other Chinese lanterns coming to its aid, perhaps?
Absolutely. No, mm-hmm. I'm wondering if anyone has checked, like, prosaic for most of the lights. Like, for instance, an airport within range, a lot of times those big bright lights look like they're hovering because they're so far away type of thing. And I know, like, for instance, on Long Island, there was people reporting, UFOs, and ended up being, lights from those big headlights the airplanes have when they're coming in for a landing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's always possible. There's military bases out there. Even NASA's not too far away from there. So it's possible. And I know what you mean, because planes, that happens out here a lot because we've got such a busy airport and clear skies. And when planes, like, turn, you'll see their headlights coming straight at you, and then they're in another direction. So it looks like this bright light just came on and faded off when it really didn't. Happens a lot. So she wonders about that, but she doesn't think so. She thinks something's checking out the area. In fact, her quote is, "There's something out there besides the shrimp boats."
Wow. Maybe checking out Florida real estate or something.
Yeah. I mean, why not? And the pictures, the area looks beautiful. I want to check out some Florida real estate. Did you live in Florida?
Never lived in Florida. I've been there many, many times. Stayed there, for a month one time in the winter. And, if I had my choice between Florida and California, it would be California first, except for the drought. But there are some places in Florida that are absolutely beautiful, like Sanibel Island and down along the West Coast, just absolutely gorgeous. All that area. Sarasota, Naples, you name it.
I've never been to Florida, but I'd love to check it out. I've been to the Caribbean, and I love it out there. So, it looks beautiful.
It is. So what else is happening?
Well, going even further away, a spat of UFO reports in the English town of Newbury. So this is kind of interesting. So what happened is there's a town near Newbury. It's just northwest of Newbury, called Hungerford. And a few days ago, there was a report of a UFO, and this lady posted this picture. Now, the picture really looks like a point of light out of focus. And I posted, a video and a picture of Venus out of focus, and to show that often people will get pictures of Venus, that look like this. But not to say that it isn't unusual, just that it does look like that. So we can't tell much from the video itself. But this got even more interesting. She says that she sees it often, and it often moves kind of strangely, and then it disappears. She says she's even told neighbors. One time she got her neighbors, and that's where this photo came from, and knocked on the door. And she's like, "Look at that. What the heck is that?" And they see this light up there. It's often reported as being flashing green and blue. So the Newbury Weekly News posted this story, and they said they got a flurry of reports from people who said they've seen the same thing. So people in the area from Newbury and other areas have called in, and they're all saying, it's weird, it's there so often, it flashes, it moves very strangely, it's eerie, and they've got at least 5 reports that they've got here on their site of other people thinking that this is something odd. So it's really interesting. In fact, one person reported it as looking like a ball bearing hanging in the sky. He said it was metallic and silvery. And it went over them, and he was sure it was not a balloon, and he watched it in amazement.
Wow. That's quote unquote, I imagine.
Yeah, well, he said it was, essentially. Yeah. And then he said it vanished.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah. And blue and green is not what you would see on an airplane, that's for sure.
You wouldn't see that on an airplane. However, I did make one point that, the same reason you see a star twinkle because you're looking through the atmosphere, if a star, especially if it is on the horizon where there's more atmosphere you're looking through, and even more so if you're like in Phoenix or L.A. or someplace where there is pollution, the lights will look different colors, and they'll look like they're changing different colors. So that would be something that could make a light change different colors. But, of course, some of these people said they felt it flew closer to them and that it's, got these weird, strange movements. So really weird stuff.
Yeah. Now, there's another, I want to say Warminster there's another area where they see sightings a lot as well in England. And they don't really have the clearest weather either.
Yeah, they don't. What's interesting, I don't know. I don't feel like when they claim that an area is a hot spot in England that they can really say that most of the time. They don't have organizations that are doing like MUFON, or we've talked about these UFO maps with Newfork, where people are actually, using some data to come to those conclusions. Often it's anecdotal, and Warminster does have sightings, and they've had a couple of really important sightings that, and I think that's why it's in people's minds. But it would be interesting. However, especially if you look at the headlines that we post, because we post them every day, the UK seems to be writing about UFO stories at least on a daily basis. They are tabloidish. These two papers, the Mirror and the Daily Express, very tabloidish, and they can be silly, and sometimes their research isn't that good, and they're sensationalizing something that's not that exciting. But they write about UFOs on a daily basis, but also local papers like this Newbury one. They seem to be very open to the topic, and it seems to like there are quite a bit of sightings in England. In fact, reading all of these stories, certainly I would say there's more news stories about UFOs in England, and it could be that there are more UFO sightings per person in England, and if someone could verify that, that would be really interesting.
Yeah, it would be good to see a similar map, like you're saying. If it's too bad they don't have like a MUFON type of, centralized organization like that, especially you think that they would if they were actually seeing all these things.
They do have some organizations, but nothing that's kind of taken off like MUFON is all over the country.
Right. So we have one more story?
We got one more, and this is a really exciting story. I love NASA stories anyway, but this is kind of neat, and this is about the same time. I wrote a longer story, very more science-y about Europa, because this is kind of cool. NASA says they're going to go to Europa, which is a moon of Jupiter that they think has a crust of ice with water below. So it's exciting. They're going to go there and start to explore it, and there's already these machines that can go under the ice, and it's just incredible to think about what might be under the ice. But
isn't pardon me, but isn't the ice like a mile thick or something?
It is 12 to 19 miles thick.
Okay. That'd be one heck of a robot.
It would, but like I wrote in my story, there's a company, Stone Aerospace, that believes that they've developed a hydrobot, is what they're called, that drills through the ice, that can drill that far. It uses fiber optics to be controlled and to get its power and everything. And they've done some trials with it already. I think it's gone 31 meters. But, it's hard to find mile-thick ice here on our planet. But they say no problem. They can do it. So it seems like the technology already exists to accomplish that. Yeah. So it might not be as far-fetched as we think.
Wow. How about that?
But so this is to support my idea that over in England they love UFOs. NASA's administrator, Charles Bolden, went to speak with the British school children, and they asked him about aliens in Area 51, and it's kind of cool. His answers were pretty neat. He essentially said in his talk that, at NASA they believe they're going to find extraterrestrial life somewhere. So one kid said, well, do you believe in aliens? And he said, I do believe that we will someday find other forms of life, or a form of life, if not in our solar system, then in some other solar system, the billions of other solar systems in the universe. So that was kind of cool. But then he started talking about Area 51. He says it does exist, but he doesn't think there are aliens there. In fact, he said he's been there. He called it a normal research and development place. He says, I never saw any aliens or alien spacecraft or anything when I was there. He says, I think because of the secrecy of the aeronautics research that goes on there, it's ripe for people to talk about aliens being there. So kind of cool. This guy had been to Area 51 and talked about it. So, and he admitted, and there's still some people who don't believe Area 51 exists. So just further support to Area 51 exists.
Wow.
Maybe there's no aliens there, but
Yeah.
he says there's aliens somewhere, and gosh darn it, he thinks NASA's going to find them.
Well, either that or they'll find us, right?
Yeah, I think that's most likely the case. If, of course, like the field we're in, if, of course, they haven't already found us and they're sneaking around, being sneaky little buggers, just frustrating the heck out of people like me and you or our listeners, not exposing themselves thoroughly, but just kind of being tricky little critters.
Makes you really, when you really think about it, you know, it comes up on the show all the time, and your show too, is that it really is so elusive. And it's just, you know, the common comment you always hear from anyone on the skeptical side, which I think it's good to be on the skeptical side, but is, you know, all so-called evidence is fleeting. You know, there's, and unpredictable, unrepeatable. So it just, I think it's up to them. If they want us to know, they will let us know.
I am of the same exact opinion because, like you said, what we found thus far has been fleeting, and a lot of the best minds, the scientists who believe there's something going on, there's some sort of intelligence at play here, third party, that they're just two steps ahead of us, and we just can't catch them.
If they have the means to get here, then they have the means to do that too.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
I agree.
All right there, friend. We'll be talking to you next week.
All right. Talk to you next week, buddy.
All right. So, everyone, hang on for just a minute here, a quick little music break, and we'll be back with Ron James. Hello, Ron James. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Good. Thanks for joining us. And this is the first time we've ever spoke, well, today. And so the listening audience out there would like to know, who is Ron James? So if you wouldn't mind going right in, explaining who you are, your interests, how you got interested in the topic, and we'll talk about filmmaking after that.
Awesome. Well, you know, back when I was coming up in the media business, I used to watch UFO shows and read the magazines. And I remember Nick Pope, when he was actually still Minister of Defense, used to write a column for UFO magazine. And I remember thinking, wow, that's pretty cool that some guy in government will actually talk to people about this stuff. And then I see Stanton Friedman on TV, and I think to myself, wow, this is so awesome. Here's this guy who's a scientist, and he is actually willing to really go on the record and really explore this subject. And so I thought that it was really great that it was getting the kind of exposure that it was getting. And later on, I started being exposed to a lot of different mysteries besides just the ET question. And I started realizing that they're all profoundly interconnected. And, you know, early on, I decided that when I got into media, this is a direction that I wanted to go. And so since then, I've been on a spiritual odyssey through Sedona, Arizona, where I produced over 200 DVDs covering everything from cryptozoology to ghosts and EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, all the way to several docs about UFOs, metaphysical practices, new science, quantum physics, and how science and the paranormal are kind of fusing together into some common understandings. It hasn't happened yet, but it's getting there. And of course, the UFO stuff. So I've produced the X Conference 2 years in a row. I've done a ton of behind-the-scenes stuff, producing these events and handling all the video production and the streaming. And then, of course, I did the Citizen Hearing on Disclosure, which my company produced. And then I am currently involved in the Congressional Hearing Initiative, working with Steve Bassett. We sent out the DVDs of the Citizen Hearing to every single member of Congress. We sat in my house together and made 6,500 DVDs on a burner and put them in boxes and shipped them to every member of Congress. And so now we're very actively pursuing people in Washington to try and bring about disclosure. So that's a background on, what I've done and where I'm from. And then, of course, I've won the EBE Awards are arguably the biggest award in the film test, in the ET film category. And in 2012, I won Best Picture and People's Choice for the Disclosure Dialogues. And then in 2015, we won the Best Film and People's Choice for the Travis Walton documentary, which I'm continuing to take a lead role in.
Yeah. It seems like we're having just a little bit of an issue with your phone. Is everything all right with that, as far as you know?
Sure.
Okay.
It should be. Is it better now?
Seems a little better now, yes. And the name of your website is ivolvetv.com. ivolvetv.com.
Yes, and that's like an online subscription-based TV network where you can find all kinds of topics about the metaphysical stuff, the ET question, and of course all the related subjects.
Is it just your material alone?
No, we have material from other people. I've produced a lot of stuff, so a lot of the content on there is mine. But we're developing original shows right now, and everybody's invited to participate. So if there's content creators out there that would like to find a place to monetize their content, we can give them that option.
Now, I don't really want to open a can of worms here, but I might be by asking this question. But it seems to me that there are other people that did a disclosure, the citizen hearing video. So is it two different parties that did these videos?
No, the citizen hearing was put on by Steve Bassett and CHD2 Productions, and the guys that are running CHD2 Productions have released the official citizen hearing package, and so it's out there, it's available, and it's all Steve still owns a third of that company, and everybody's working together.
Okay, because I had someone on a while back that was saying that they did the video as well. That's why I'm a little bit confused about that part of it.
Well, on a big production, there's a lot of people that do a lot of things. Just to set the record straight, my company was the sole provider of video services to the Citizen Hearing on Disclosure. We shot every foot of footage. We provided all of the edited pieces to CHD2 Productions. And, I'm not going to really get too far into it, but I have heard that, and I think that maybe there's some people out there taking credit for things they didn't do, and they shouldn't do it. But beyond that, I'm not going to comment.
All right, sure. So speaking of that, okay, you put out these 6,500 DVDs that you burned, which is amazing. I can't imagine how long that took. You sent them out.
It was a job.
Yeah. Now, I had Steve on shortly after that, and I asked him what the reaction was, and he said, so far, nothing. Do you know if anything's changed as far as the reaction of those DVDs going out?
Sure. It's very interesting because there's some very interesting correlations between some things that have happened and some dates and some announcements made by PRG. So, one of the things that was very interesting is that at the Citizen Hearing on Disclosure, John Burroughs was giving his testimony about the fact that he couldn't get his medical records. And since then, the government has come to him and settled and made an agreement with him that he can live with. And there's some admissions on the government's part inside of these documents. And we feel that a large part of that was helped to be brought about by the fact that the ex-Congress people that heard testimony at the citizen hearing were instrumental in writing a letter to Congress and to the powers that be in government, asking that they make these medical records available. So that was one quantifiable action that we saw as a result of the hearings. And then in Washington, we've had a publicist working to get us, more and more information, to get the information out there. So when we announced that the DVDs were going to Congress, just within a couple days of that announced date, Bill Clinton went on Jimmy Kimmel and did his famous conversation. And then there was another announcement by PRG about the Hillary Clinton and the Rockefeller Initiative. And shortly before that information was going to hit Capitol Hill, Obama went on Jimmy Kimmel and talked about the ET issue. And although they didn't give us much, they gave us certainly food for fodder. And, we think that those events are interconnected. And certainly when Podesta made his announcement that his biggest disappointment of 8 years in the White House was that he was unable to get the UFO files declassified, he actually, in his tweet where he made that comment, he used hashtag disclosure. And the hashtag disclosure is the hashtag that we created for the Congressional Hearing Initiative. And for the people who are paying attention to these actions, that was almost a signal to people that are involved heavily in the disclosure movement that we're on the right track. It was an acknowledgement in an unofficial way. And so those things happened. And then the biggest magazine that Congress reads is called Roll Call. It's like the trade magazine for congressmen and senators. And they gave us a huge write-up explaining the whole thing from the very beginning, before the citizen hearing, all the way through the disclosure movement. And it was very well received. And since then, believe it or not, Steve has been getting meetings with congressional staffers, giving them another copy of the citizen hearing on disclosure, and laying out for them why Congress should be having hearings. So when you consider the fact that the lobbyist movement is trying to do this through the political process that exists now, with all of the need for secrecy that this issue has been wrapped in for decades, it's good to see that, yes, there is some movement happening, and actually a lot more than a lot of people thought.
Well, it'll be interesting. I always hear from different people. Last week we actually had Ben Hansen on the show. He's the one that went through both the Jimmy Kimmel films of both the president and past president and studied them and gave an analysis. Interesting. The whole thing was interesting. And when I spoke to Leslie Kean right after the Podesta tweet, and she was under the impression, she knows him pretty well, they keep in touch, but she never asked him directly about that tweet, but she said that's just his sense of humor. So I think, that was partially speculating on her side.
Leslie's on the record as not really believing in the work of PRG, and so, different people are going to have different opinions, and that's okay. But I know that when Ben analyzed the footage, he was pretty convinced that they know more than they're telling, and I think that just going on there and giving us what we call a limited hangout, where you're just going to acknowledge something, but you're not going to acknowledge everything. We know that Bill Clinton at the Jimmy Kimmel show said what he said, and basically was saying that it wasn't until the second term that they really had an interest in the ET issue. But we know for a fact that that's not true, because the Rockefeller Initiative with Lawrence Rockefeller started during the first term. And there's, obviously a very famous paper trail and the pictures of Clinton with Hillary Clinton with Paul Davies' book in her bag on the Rockefeller estate during the first administration, the first years. That's all, in the record. So when you say, well, we didn't pay attention to it until the second term when I started to have Roswell investigated, well, that's not true. So he went on Jimmy Kimmel, and for people that are in the know, he gave us basically a lie. And so, when somebody lies like that, and it's very easy to point out, then yeah, there's going to be people that don't really pay attention. There's going to be people that know what's going on that are going to say, wait a minute, that's tantamount to an admission almost. It's like when the Air Force says that Roswell was crash dummies, or no, it was a weather balloon, or no, it was this and that. When the lie becomes so ludicrous, it's almost like an admission in itself.
Right. I know there was some controversy about that book, but I checked that out too, and I'm trying to remember. I was trying to find it really quick which book that was that supposedly she was carrying. Do you remember what that book was?
There was a book by Paul Davies, and I don't remember the exact title, but it was something like the Societal Implications of ET Contact.
Okay, we're having a little bit of a signal issue there. Is your signal? Would you mind checking your phone, just seeing if you have a good signal on that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It says it's good. Let me.
All right.
How about now? Does it sound better?
Yeah, right now it does. Yeah. So. Okay. Yeah, I have the page up where all the photos are compared and everything, but I'll be darned if I can't find the book name. It's not on that. It doesn't look like it's even on that page. John Gibbons? Nope, that was a science advisor.
No, it's Paul Davies.
Paul Davies. Okay.
If you Google Paul Davies, you'll find the book.
Yeah. Well, that was an interesting thing. It seemed to me that someone was trying to say that was hoaxed or something, or photoshopped in there or something. I don't know. Had you ever heard anything about that?
I suppose that anything could be photoshopped, but you have to remember that these were pictures. Certainly, you can't say that there was no Photoshop, but they're older pictures, and nobody's ever been able to show an original that doesn't have that image.
Okay. There's a person on the message board that wants to know what your Sedona media site is, please, website is. Or are there any videos out there where people can buy, and where can you get them?
Yeah, you can go to evolvetv.com, and my DVDs are in the store, and then also the catalog is available on pay-per-view. So you can buy a password and watch it, anytime, anywhere. All of the films are available, and we actually have an ET collection that has some really great films from Suzanne Taylor, Jose Escamilla, myself, and you can watch all of them for $9.99. So there's some different options, and inside the store of iVolve TV, you can buy the DVDs. Okay,
good. So did you have going way back here? Did you have an interest in UFOs and other paranormal activities early on in life, or is this something that came about later?
I always had a passing interest in it, but I'd never realized that it was going to be as big a part of my life as it is now. I try to approach all of this from a journalistic standpoint, and so people say, well, what kind of experiences have you had that led you here? And, truthfully, I've never seen a UFO. I've never been abducted by an alien. I've had some strange things happen in a haunted house. But at the end of the day, I think that exploring mysteries is the adventure of life. And so, there's a lot of things that are out there that we can see and touch and feel, and there's a lot of things that are out there that we just know. And bringing those to the forefront and trying to solidify their presence in a more scientifically validated manner is really exciting.
I'm there with you 100%. I did have a sighting. I had a passing interest as well, but always had an interest in astronomy and science and things like that. And once I had a sighting in 2006, I started paying a lot more attention. And I don't know. I guess it's time I can tell this. I told this toward the beginning of the show when I started, but how I got into doing a podcast is kind of on the UFO topic is kind of funny. If any listener hasn't heard it out there, I'll just tell it real quickly. And years ago, I was doing a little bit of stand-up comedy, nothing, just amateur. But I had a podcast for a while on interviewing some actually pretty good comedians. And another podcast contacted me, said they wanted to be on, asked me on their show. And so I went on their show. And they asked me in the middle of the show, what was the strangest thing that ever happened? And I talked about my sighting, and the entire time, the person that was running the podcast, named Skip something, was teasing me the whole entire time and laughing and, talking about the anal probe and, all this stuff. And I had, oh, brother, I had to listen to that. So I said, well, that's the last time I talk about that, type of thing. Well, he was having like Google Analytics, and he was saying this podcast is being played a lot, and he had his podcast transcribed, and then he emailed me and says, guess what? It's when we were talking about UFOs. So like 2 weeks later, I said, you know what? I was doing a podcast on fine art and antiques, and it's a little dry. I'm really into the topic, but it's kind of dry. But this is exciting to me, and I just decided one day I checked out different URLs, and I said, what's the easiest URL for someone looking for a podcast on UFOs? And Podcast UFO it was, and
there you go.
And so I started, and I contacted a bunch of people, Stanton Friedman and all kinds of people like that. And all of a sudden, one guy answered me, and that was Steve Bassett. So he was the first person on my show. And
yeah, that's pretty funny. I've been working with Steve on and off for a long time. And it seems that there's a lot of people that are part of my life now that I met through Steve, and it's very interesting. People that have nothing to do with the UFO field even. So he's been an influence, and I just been able to help him out with this stuff. And a lot of people, I catch a certain amount of flack because people say there's no way there's ever going to be disclosure. There's no way that the president is ever going to stand at a podium and say, oh, we've been lying to you for 50 years, and yes, there's aliens, and here's one right here. And maybe that's true, but the political process moving for disclosure is just another part of the push for truth. So if we didn't have somebody in Washington doing this work, then there'd be a big void in the movement. And so I always say to people that regardless of whether you think this is going to end in the kind of disclosure that Steve says it's going to end in, it doesn't really matter. It's extremely vital that somebody be doing this work because it's part of the process. The ship of change is a huge ocean liner, and it turns very slowly. And we've got the media providing some element of disclosure, some say. We've got declassified documents that are providing it. And the day that the government comes out and says, yes, okay, it's all been a lie, may or may not come. But it's just another side of this that we have to keep pushing. We have to keep knocking on the door. We have to keep engaging the political process, no matter what it turns out to be. It's part of the movement. And so for all the people that come to me and say, that's never going to happen the way Bassett thinks it is, I just have to say, it's like, it doesn't matter. It has to be done. Somebody has to be doing this. If we didn't have somebody in Washington trying to rail against Monsanto, are we ever going to put them out of business? Are we ever going to stop GMOs? Probably not. But without that pressure, they would be running completely rampant on us. If we didn't have groups out there making these lobbyist movements and engaging the political process through political means, then who knows how bad the lies would get, and who knows how much disclosure we'd be getting through other sources. So, I think it's really important work.
I'm on the side where I kind of agree with, the side that says the government would, never, disclose, and it's mostly because what could they possibly say about lying to us if that is the case? How they would have a lot of answers to answer, but I do have to say that I agree with you, and I have said it before that it's better than doing nothing, and it will, like you just said about Monsanto, which I'd love to see something happen with that, but it's just like if no one does anything, as far as politics go, then things could run rampant as far as the lies, the future lies, or the cover-ups. This would make them at least a little more guarded if such a thing is actually happening, in my opinion.
Well, it's true. And, who knows what Podesta really meant with hashtag disclosure, but to us, we feel like it was a direct nod. And I don't think that somebody who worked that hard in the administration, despite what Leslie Keene says, somebody that worked that hard in the administration to get that information released is going to make a big joke out of it when he has the nerve to make this tweet. I mean, it's like to go on the record saying that and then to put something like hashtag disclosure in there and then have somebody like Keene just write it off as a big joke because he's got a funny sense of humor doesn't make any sense to me. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of things that have happened, the article and roll call, and these other things, they all go into the official record. And you might have somebody standing on a corner screaming that they're a contactee or whatever, but none of that's going into the political record. The citizen hearing on disclosure was a documented event, a part of history, and the Congressional Hearing Initiatives has been documented by Congress. The CDs, the DVDs that arrived in Washington were received. There's a record of all of this. And so somewhere in the future, when all of the people that have something to lose by being caught for being a part of a lie are dead, there's this record of this effort. And, we don't know where it's going to go or where it's going to end up. But at the end of the day, it lives in history.
Yep. No, I agree. And I think, it's who knows how, if there ever is disclosure, how it's ever really going to come about. Everyone says not everyone, but a lot of people speculate that, what would it take for the government, if it has been hiding the UFO topic, what would it take for them to actually break down and say, okay, we acknowledge this? I mean, it would have to be some type of massive contact or even beyond a sighting. It would have to be more than that, I believe. And, that may happen sooner or later. I mean, now there's more acknowledgement about the possibility of life out there. It's kind of like we're almost being eased into the reality of this being so.
Well, that's certainly part of the process of disclosure is that, the information is out there. Sure, it's buried in disinformation, and you have to kind of pick the bones of the legends and lore to look for the things that resonate to you as possibly being true. And you have to do your own research. But at the end of the day, the information's out there. And the people that have been guarding this information, they know they can't keep it a secret forever. But, there's also this idea, people seem to think like we're somehow qualified to become part of the galactic family. And I think that if I ventured my opinion about it, I don't think that humanity is ready to be welcomed into a federation of space brothers. I think that we have a long way to go. And I think that until we develop as a species beyond the threat of self-destruction and beyond the threat of, a world with ISIS does not belong off this planet. And so, I see a lot of people in LA, they're all like, oh, I'm enlightened, I go to yoga, I'm spiritual, I love everybody. It's like, great, more power to you. But until we spread that level of human advancement all the way through the farthest corners of the globe, so that we are not walking around constantly doing self-destructive and dysfunctional behavior, we're not ready. And so I don't think that we're going to be, maybe there's some forces helping us and hindering us from unseen places, but the flying saucer is not going to land in Central Park and welcome us to space until we've proven that we can do it.
Right. Have you, in your research for any of your videos or anything like that, have you considered? It seems to me that when the UFO topic comes up, people consider different thoughts of what they may be, not just extraterrestrial. Have you ever thought about or talked to anybody that made sense to you about any other possibilities of what they possibly could be?
Sure. I mean, I had a very interesting talk with Richard Dolan about that. And also I don't know if you know who Chris O'Brien is, but Chris and I have made several films together, and he's one of my best friends. He's of the idea that there's an underground civilization, and, there's always the interdimensional possibility. And truthfully, when you get right down to it, if you were traversing the great distance of space and you're using some sort of a wormhole, that would almost make you an interdimensional traveler just as much as it made you an extraterrestrial traveler. So the idea that there are entities coming from places that are not necessarily other planets, it makes perfect sense, and there's probably that as well. So I think that maybe there's a lot of different civilizations and a lot of different types of entities that are all around us all the time that we don't see and that we don't know about. And I think all of those things are possible.
Well, sometimes, last week I ended up telling a ghost story. And I never thought I would do that, something that I experienced. And that was in the second hour of the program. And I'm surprised I didn't get a lot of email people saying, it's a UFO show, for crying out loud. But,
that's kind of funny.
Sometimes, though, it makes you wonder if, these things are connections through something that we just, we can't see, we can't actually touch and feel, but somehow there's a connection through other ways. Maybe that's the explanation of what people call ghosts, and I don't know. And sometimes they are interrelated. I mean, you hear about, say, maybe hot spots with sightings, and people see Bigfoot and ghosts and everything else in the same area. I mean, it's really kind of amazing when you hear about these places that experience all that. And
I've been. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I was going to ask you also. Have you ever checked into anything like that for one of your videos, like one of these hotspots where all these different things seem to be happening?
Oh, absolutely. I've been twice in the Mysterious Valley, San Luis Valley, where Chris writes his book.
Oh, yeah.
Books about. Him and I did we did the documentary on it. It surrounded Snippy the horse, but it was really all about the valley itself. And then, and so we did that film. And then I did Mysterious Creatures in the Southwest with David Hatcher Childress, Chris, and I. And a big part of that was our journey to Dulce, where we were taken out on the reservation and shown some places that were supposedly heavily trafficked by Bigfoot, and interviewed some witnesses. And really, they rolled out the red carpet for us in a way that you don't really see the Native Americans in that region do normally. So it was very interesting.
Wow. Getting back earlier, we were talking about the book that supposedly Hillary Clinton has in her bag as she's walking on the Rockefeller estate. And I found the title. It's called Are We Alone? There's no question mark there. And that is by Paul Davies. So that's the name of the book.
Yeah, and I think the subtitle is something like The Societal Impact of Extraterrestrial Contact or something like that.
Yeah. Well, anyway, that little mystery has been...
Well, see, here's the thing. So we know that was happening during the first administration, and it's not like it's a big secret, right? Everybody knows it that has bothered to do any research. The documentation is in 100 places on the Internet. So when Bill Clinton just bold-faced says, well, around the second term, I decided to look into it, you're literally acknowledging to those people who know that you're not telling the truth. And so, you really have to kind of look at that. That's why Ben Hanson's work was so valuable on these two interviews, because he was able to use an educated process to read between the lines and tell us what was really being said. Certainly, and he prefaces it that, it's just his opinion, but it's based on some pretty good foundations. Then that's exactly what happened. These guys, on the surface, they gave us a limited response that, there was canned laughter and everything else. But for the people that are really paying attention, they got a big nugget from both of these interviews. And so that's kind of how it works, and that's how disclosure is working, and that's why hashtag disclosure in Podesta's tweet was such a big deal. And so, the people that are in the position, they can't just come out and disclose, but they can leave these little clues, and people can say, well, that wasn't a clue. But if you know what to listen for, and you know the facts, then they're telling the people who know what to listen for what they need to hear.
Now, I wonder, Podesta, if anyone actually, I'm sure it happened, that maybe even his colleagues or someone said, hey, what's up with that, type of thing. It'd be interesting to know, if anyone has actually talked to him about this. And I don't think that anybody has been, releasing what he said one-on-one about it. Have you heard anything out there?
No, it's interesting. There's very little. And I think that, it has to do with, again, this is the way this process works. You've got all these people clamoring for disclosure. You've got a government that is, probably divided on how much we should be told. Well, the evidence is piled up, and you've got to do something. So you take a mid-level guy, and you get him to start making some noise about it, and it gives you the illusion that you're doing something, or that you're trying to do something, or that you're on the side of the people that want to know. And it gives the people that want to know a little bit to hold on to, and a little bit to look forward to, and a little bit of acknowledgement. And it kind of satisfies everybody. Not obviously not to the point of disclosure, but and then you go a little bit further with hanging out some of these phrases and some of these mistruths and some of these other actions that mean more to some than others, and so it's a very clever way of playing the game while still maintaining the official veil of secrecy. Right.
So we're on right now with Ron James, and if someone would like to call in, every once in a while, Ron, someone will call in. And so if you'd like to call in, the number is 603-967-4030. And if you're listening live, you can jump over to podcastufo.com, and right on the home page there, you'll see the chat room. You can jump in and ask our guest a question. So what we do, Ron, I neglected to tell you, but in about 8 minutes or so, we take just a quick little music break, and you're not to go anywhere. It's just so I can separate the two parts of the show. And so at the top of the hour, I will let you know that. But continuing on, you're in, you live right near Steve Bassett, don't you, out there in California?
Well, actually, Steve's in Washington right now during the congressional hearing initiative. So, but yeah, when he's in California, we're both in the South Bay area, LA, Hollywood, and in the beach cities.
Now, it seemed to me like it wasn't too long ago there was a sighting in Southern California. Do you stay up on that? What's going on regionally?
Well, there's so many sightings in all these different places, and I'm not the one that grabs my video camera and goes running every time there's reports of a sighting. So, we've got this weird anomaly underwater that has been found off of the coast of Malibu, and then we've got, my window looks right out over the Catalina area. So there's always strange things happening in the sky, but whether or not it's things that can't be explained, I don't know. But yeah, there's sightings everywhere, and they're starting to increase. And so, like this weekend, I went and took a look at this thing this guy does named Robert Bingham. He calls himself the UFO Summoner, and he says that he can go anywhere and meditate, and strange anomalies will appear in the sky. And so he's actually built up quite a reputation. And so I went to see for myself this weekend, and that was kind of interesting.
And did you see anything? Any UFOs?
I did not see any UFOs on that day. I saw a lot of Mylar balloons. However, I will say that some of the videos that he's gotten are intriguing, but a lot of them are obviously something that can be explained logically. But, it only takes those few that you can't explain, kind of like Project Blue Book. So who knows what's going on with that? But there's definitely things happening in the sky that we can't explain, even beyond the UFO thing. There's the idea that maybe there's life forms that we haven't discovered that live in the atmosphere, like rods, that have been caught on cameras, high-speed cameras. And so who knows what he's really seeing some of the times when things look like unexplainable objects. But there's enough there to warrant further investigation.
Well, I remember there was a little bit of a battle going on between, I want to say, Jimmy Church and Lee Spiegel about that Malibu geological thing off the coast of Malibu. And I think that there was some research done on that by someone from the U.S. Geological Survey that is just a rock formation or something. Have you looked into that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard both sides of the story. At the end of the day, until somebody goes down there and photographs it, we don't know. It's quite possible that it's just an anomaly with the Google Earth satellite mapping. But rock formations, if you go to Peru and you look at a rock formation, or the jungles of Guatemala, and you look at a rock formation, it doesn't mean it's not something. In fact, a lot of times it's a pyramid that's been covered up. So until the mystery is completely addressed in a way that nobody can debate it anymore, it's going to be a topic of discussion. But there's definitely a lot of weird underwater things happening in this area off the coast.
Early on I asked you about what type of reaction you got out of when you sent all those DVDs out to, members of Congress. But someone in the message board wants to know, has anyone actually acknowledged that they received them and watched them? Do you happen to know that?
Yeah, I mean, now we don't know how many people have watched them, but we know that we've had some meetings. The major committees in Washington are the ones that we've targeted for meetings, because if we can get the thing into a committee where they're discussing it, then they have to talk openly about the possibilities of holding hearings, and then we have to explain, if they choose not to do it, why they wouldn't. So, yeah, we do know. What we know for a fact is that the DVDs or parts of the DVDs have been viewed by several staffers in several offices. We don't know how many Congress people have actually taken the time to watch them, but we do know that they're making the rounds. And yes, the receipt of them has been acknowledged, and meetings are happening. That's the most exciting thing, is that you knock on these doors enough, they're going to talk to you, even if it's a low-level staffer that they just sent you. They let you into the office and they sit down long enough to hear what you have to say. It's still something, and so. That's a big deal. So yeah, they've been acknowledged, and there's a certain amount of attention, and the attention's not ending because of the Rockefeller Initiative and Hillary Clinton's presidential bid. The ongoing strategy right now is to bring this into the limelight and make it a question that she has to answer as part of the campaign. And we think that there's just enough opposition to her candidacy that somebody's going to bring it up.
They'll probably bring up the email first. the hidden email. You keep hearing about that.
Yeah, well, what would be fun is if the hidden email was in reference to the Rockefeller Initiative. There you go. Or maybe the email to Podesta saying, this is why we can't disclose. You never know. But at the end of the day, it's another potential issue for somebody who needs some potential issues regarding the Clintons to bring into the mix. And so maybe they will.
Right. That would be what you call a twofer, if we get that.
Yeah, and I know for a fact that, that's kind of the strategy right now, reaching out to the Republican opposition and saying, by the way, did you know about this? And, I know for a fact that that's being done.
Yeah. So you were there at the entire time, obviously, filming during the citizen hearing. What do you think, and I know that some of the people that spoke sort of went a little bit fringy. I mean, I was kind of involved in checking out what was going on at the time and all that, and got a lot of feedback from people that were there, live and, on every other day or whatever. I'd hear from someone. But when you heard those people speak, and then you heard the retired congressional people interact, did you see anyone in particular that you would say, no, that person really is taking this seriously?
It's interesting because there wasn't a single one that didn't. I had some interviews that I shot that I haven't released yet, where I actually stood and spoke to every one of them and asked them these questions. And, every one of them walked into this thing either A, not thinking much about the topic, or B, not knowing what to expect. And they left saying, you know what? We really have to get to the bottom of this. And so, that's a credit to how professionally the event was put on. It looked and felt and was, constructed just like a real hearing. And yes, I'll be the first to admit there was a couple of people that just went completely derailed, especially in closing statements. And we don't need to mention any names, but there was some things that probably shouldn't have been said in the way they were said. But overall, you kind of have to look at the big picture, and it was very professional, very.
Oops, we lost him. So that's it for the first part of the show here. If you hang in just a minute, we'll be right back for Hour 2, again with Ron James.
Your call has been forwarded to an automated voice messaging system. 8-1. Your call has been forwarded.
Well, this is interesting. We probably have a dead cell phone. And one of the things that Dark Matter Radio Network producer is pushing is that we never have cell phones. And this is a pretty good argument for that. So I'll keep trying him. Hopefully he'll plug it into his charger. Everything will be cool. But when he sees the number that comes up that I'm dialing from, he can't call that number back. It's because it's a Skype number. It will not ring back. So I'll just keep trying him. And for now, if anyone wants to call in and say hi, the phone number here is 603-967-4030. We'll see if he answers. It could be just that the darn government just shut him down.
Hey, don't know what happened.
I was just saying it's probably the government.
Oh, yeah, it always is.
Yeah. Well, we were wondering if your battery went dead. No, it wasn't that?
No, I charged it right before we got on the phone.
Yeah, so I thought. So it just dropped, and hopefully that won't happen again.
I know. I was in the middle of saying something so profound that I'm sure that the angels got together and said, "Oh, you know what? The universe isn't ready for this yet. They're gonna have to preempt you."
Well, someone is very insistent, I should say, on the chat room. They want to know why you won't mention names of the people that were a little bit out there. And I had someone on the show. I'm going to say it to the chat room. That I had this person on the show, but I understand she went really out there, and that's the wonderful Linda Moulton Howe. I heard that she went a little on the fringe side during that. So I'll be the first to admit that, and I will tell you, I had her on the show. She was very gracious, very nice, and for some reason, there's tens of thousands of listens to that show. She has a lot of people that follow her.
Oh, she really does. Here's what I think. I think that there was there's a time and a place. The citizen hearing was a time and a place to stick to the facts and not to get out there with too much conjecture and not to get out there with too many things that are so far out of the mainstream that science can't even begin to acknowledge them. And so, I think that anybody that paid attention to citizen hearing knows what happened. I'm not really interested in dishing on people and putting my opinion about things that people said that was wrong, because it's not really my place. I'm a journalist, and I shouldn't interject my own viewpoints into the stories that I share. That being said, the people that were at the hearing and the people that watched the hearing, they know that, if somebody crossed the line, and that should be enough. I think that some of the closing statements got a little bit off track, and I think that, maybe Paul Hellier's deciding to quote from the book that he quoted from was done it was inappropriate for the time and the platform. And I think anytime anybody jumped in with too much conjecture and not enough science, that it's kind of derailed what the hearings were supposed to be about. It was about an investigation of the facts. And so, that's what I'll say about that.
Yeah, sure. And Paul Hellyer had such an advantage with his background of making some things really happen in that whole situation. And, he's actually, I've been communicating with him now for a year and a half. And I want him on the show, regardless of how out there he's, gone.
Look, I'll tell you something. The stuff that he said, okay, I think that, it was pretty valid, but I just don't think that it was the place and the platform to bring it to the forefront. I think that it just wasn't the place to open up those doors.
Mm-hmm. I was really glad about, you mentioned earlier about John Boros and Peniston, both of their medical records looked into because of that. I think if it's true that they are suffering from whatever radiation or whatever that happened, it may be just something other than that. But if it's true that that's what they're suffering from, they should be taken care of instead of just ignored. So I was glad to have that happen. I did speak with him, John Burroughs, on the show shortly after they acknowledged that and started working on it. And hopefully, they both have some really bad health problems, and hopefully they'll be taken care of.
Yeah, and I think that I honestly think that the urging of the ex-Congress people and the exposure from the citizen hearing was very instrumental in getting forward momentum on resolving all of that. And, it's very interesting the way it resolved, and some of the phraseology in the settlement paperwork. That's very telling. Unidentified aerial phenomenon and things of that nature that were referred to. It's just another feather in the slow cap of the disclosure movement.
Now, someone was just asking on the message board, wondering why it wasn't available, the citizen hearing wasn't available for free on YouTube like a former one back in 2001. And I know that there was someone's trying to recoup some money that was spent or something like that. I've heard these type of things. Do you know anything about any of that?
Well, I can tell you that a significant amount of money was invested in the citizen hearing. And, let me just say that, and I might offend some people right now, but this kind of gets my goat. I don't get where people think that filmmakers especially should be obligated to go out and work their butts off so that they can give their work away for free to people who somehow think that they deserve it. The citizen hearing and disclosure cost almost $1 million to produce. Now, that's great, and we would love to give it away free to the entire planet. But the fact of the matter is, if we don't recoup that money, we can't keep doing this work. And so that person, you don't go to your job every day and work for free, and why should we? Okay, we put a lot of energy into that. We put a lot of money into it. And frankly, the people out there that want to see disclosure happen and want to see this movement survive and want to see people like myself and Ruben and Jeremy and Steve all be able to continue doing this work, hey, wake up call, dude. We deserve to make a living too. And so why should we take the fruits of our labors and put them on YouTube for free? You're not taking what you do for a living and giving it away and going home without a paycheck. So shame on you for asking the question. That's what I think about that. I get so annoyed by people who think that as a filmmaker, I have some obligation to work my ass off so that you can steal my stuff on YouTube. It really ticks me off. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. You got fired up. That's okay. I understand that, and let me just tell you, I started charging for the second hour of the podcast here because it was costing me money. I had to get a dedicated server. I do pay for other expenses constantly on a monthly basis. So, but here's the issue with any of this stuff. If you ask me, my opinion, if you want to hear it or not, is that the problem is that there's so much out there that is free, and so many ways to get it. Whether it's someone ripping torrents, or all the way back to Napster. It's just that there's so many ways of getting free material out there that it's a paradise for a person that doesn't want to.
Yeah, I understand that. But you know what it is? It's thievery. If you who just ripped my DVD off of YouTube or ripped it off a DVD and posted it to YouTube, how about I come to your house tonight, I wait till you leave, and I go in and I go through your wife's jewelry box and I take all her stuff, because that's what you're doing to me. Not only is it just as illegal, just because you can get away with it because it's hard to catch you, doesn't mean you're not a criminal. It doesn't mean you're not a dishonest person, and it doesn't mean that your integrity is in the toilet. So everybody that does this stuff is participating in a criminal act, and shame on all of you.
Okay. Well, we don't even know if any of our listeners actually do any of that stuff. So,
well, the guy who wants to know how come my work isn't available for free, I would like to invite him to come mow my lawn, because if I'm giving all my stuff away, I can't afford to pay my gardener.
Well, to be fair, it was I think it was a question he was just asking.
I know, but this is indicative of the mentality of the public, that people actually think it has gotten so bad that now people think that just as a given, if I go and I make a movie, I should just give it to you. And if I can't afford to make another movie, or I had to mortgage my house and I don't get it back because I'm not making any money off the movie I just made, nobody cares. Why do a different set of rules apply to us as media creators than apply to anybody else? And these very same people wouldn't dream of going to work for a day and not getting paid. So it's all it does is it points to a dysfunctional thing that's happening in our society, and I can't turn it around right now, but that's why Evolve TV is pay-per-view or subscription-based. If you want the material, help support our ability to make it. I mean, it's perfectly sensible. If you go to a restaurant to eat food, you understand that you need to pay for the food. If you want to enjoy stuff that is made with no advertising, and if you want the filmmakers to be able to continue to do what they do, then you have to be willing to support it. And I don't know how the perception of people got so twisted, but now it's like, you can't go to a bank and rob the bank, but the same people that would never rob a bank because it's wrong and it's illegal, they'll have no problem stealing a song or stealing a video or watching something on YouTube knowing that they ripped off the content creator and put it up. Well, it's I think it's a big issue.
I think part of the movement has to do with, I only recently started charging, but I've had some generous people help me out. One of them's actually in the chat room right now. A couple of them actually. So the deal is I know, but if you're a waiter in a restaurant, should you be expected to work in that restaurant for free, hoping that one or two people are going to give you a big tip? No. But why does that apply to us? But my point that I was trying to make is, I did this totally for the love of doing it. And when it started costing me money, I'm not looking to make money on this particular podcast, and I'm not comparing it to your movies or your film or anything like that, because that is something you're doing as an occupation. This is not my primary occupation, so
yeah, it is our primary occupation, and the people that made the citizen hearing on disclosure, it blew me away. We actually got people complaining that they couldn't access they couldn't download from the live stream so they could post it on YouTube. I mean, it really blew me away. We only charged $3 to watch the entire week of testimony, and we had people complaining about that. And it's just like, I just don't get it. But whenever I get into this debate with people, and you can tell I'm a little charged up about it, because it's anybody out there that's watching anything that they didn't pay for, that the content creator is trying to get paid for. Any one of you are doing that, think about how you feel and how fired up you'd be if a bunch of filmmakers waited outside your house until you left and then went and stole your TV. It's the same thing. That's what you're doing to us. If you're just a little part of it, but it's terrible. And I don't really like to get into a debate about it on radio shows, but you brought it up. And the fact of the matter is, it just has to stop. The public needs to understand that media, just because you can get it, doesn't mean you should. And just because you can get away with stealing something doesn't mean it's not stealing. So, you know, you meet all these people that are upstanding church-going folks, but they have no problem pirating some software or downloading a movie that they know they're downloading illegally. So, as a society, we really have to take a look at that.
Okay. So let's move on to...
Yay!
Yeah. I want to ask you, what's in the future? What are things that you're looking to do? You know, mostly I want to stay, of course, on the UFO topic, but are you involved in something now or have something planned?
Yeah, I mean, you know, as you may or may not know, I'm supervising all the special effects sequences for the reenactments for the Travis Walton doc, which is the second version 2.0 of that movie is coming out in November. It's going to be very, very packed with some really cool stuff. And then my show, Bigger Questions, I'm constantly evolving that. We just added a spaceship set, and we're going to be doing some really fun stuff with taking the show out of the studio and having a little imagination, a little sci-fi feel to it. And we're really exploring how science is bringing us closer to explaining the unexplainable. And it's a really encouraging place to be because, for instance, you know, NASA is now saying, hey, you know, maybe warp drive is possible. Yeah, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, they're like, oh, that's a pipe dream. So that's just a basic example. But there's so many things where scientific theories that we didn't have 5 and 10 and 15 years ago are popping up, but they're also giving us potential answers to a whole bunch of things that we consider paranormal today. And I have this sense that as a society, until we can get science, spirituality, and mysterious phenomenon on the same page, we're largely in a dysfunctional place because we've got 3 different factions of our civilization basically ignoring the other. And so it's like, it doesn't make any sense. And there's only one truth. And until we can get on the same page with all 3 of our different ways of looking at things, then we're not really able to move forward as a cohesive species. So to me, the fusion of science, spirituality, and unexplained phenomena are, you know, one of the most important things that a media person could be focused on. And so that's what I'm doing.
Now, I saw something on YouTube, and it was free, that it showed your, what is it called, The Big Question? Or what is that called, the show?
Yeah, Bigger Questions. Yeah.
The Bigger Question. And I did see, that's quite a studio you have there. Is a lot of that green screen, or?
No, it's a real studio.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. And yeah, you know, it's like if I want to put an episode of my show on YouTube for free, that's great. But that doesn't mean that I want somebody else pirating all the other episodes off my website and putting them up for free. I share a lot of that stuff for free. But yeah, I have a whole studio that I share with somebody else. We have a 12,000 square foot facility. We shoot the original shows here. Yeah, it's just expanding more and more. So I'm in process on 9 different original shows covering topics from Fukushima radiation all the way to alternative agriculture and how to sidestep the GMO issue by producing your own food. And so, you know, there's a lot of different topics that I think appeal to everybody that we're putting together on the channel.
Do you have a fairly easy time getting guests for that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, people have to come to the studio, so it's not like I can call them on the phone. But we don't adhere to a fixed schedule. But so far, just recently, I had Stanton Friedman, which was like, you know, at the beginning of the show, I was talking about how these guys inspired me early on. And if you would have told me 20 years ago, well, you know, one day you're going to be making movies with that guy Nick Pope and that guy Stanton Friedman, and I would have been like, wow, no way. But now I do. You know, it's like it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
it's like that adventure. But yeah, and I had Nassim Haramein in just recently. We had a great interview about the paranormal and quantum physics. Just had Rosemary Ellen Guiley in. Paul Davids, the producer of Roswell, was in just recently. And so yeah, we have a pretty good group of people coming through.
Yeah, I always enjoy seeing Stanton Friedman. He is just such an approachable man. You know, You would think he almost wouldn't be, but he's very approachable. What a nice gentleman he is.
He's amazing. He's one of the famous voices in the field. The scientist who has seen enough to know that there's something going on. And it was just a real joy to have him up here. I worked with him on a couple of films, and to have him at my studio was just like, for some people, meeting the president would be a big deal. For me, having Stanton come to my studio and do a show with me was just like just amazing.
Yeah.
Very gratifying.
Yeah, he says a few things kind of repetitively, but I never get tired of hearing him.
That's true.
He's a great guy. And let's talk a little bit about first of all, I was going to have you as a third guest on a few weeks ago when I had Jennifer Stein on talking about the Travis Walton video. Getting a little bit of feedback. Ron, you're not on speakerphone, are you?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, can you explain? You said you did some effects or some type of editing, or what is your involvement?
Yeah, we've gone in after the first edition of the movie, and we hired actors, and we have shot a complete reenactment of everything that happened to Travis on the inside of the craft. And it's our goal that it be, there's been movies and everything else, but our goal right now is that it be like the most elaborate reenactment sequence that's ever been done. And so it's going to be part of the second version of the new release, and it's very exciting.
Yeah. I've talked to him, I don't know, I was out in Phoenix last February, and I said, what about, another Fire in the Sky? Is that, do you think that'll ever happen? And he thinks it may happen, in his lifetime. Well, they'll do a remake, and if it does, he really wants a little more input. That show is still watched quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, it's no secret that there's a lot about that movie in the process of making the movie that didn't sit well with Travis. And I've been very aware of keeping him included in this process as we do these shots. He's been giving us input on what works and what doesn't work. And so we really want to make the reenactment that I joke around with people. I say, if Travis watches this and does not get creeped out, then I have failed as a filmmaker to accomplish my goal.
Yeah. Because the part of that whole experience that is so amazing to me is, when he woke up on board, whatever it was, and the beings and all that part is chilling, especially when you're talking to him face to face and he's telling the story. There's no BS meter going off when I talk to Travis.
No, and I wasn't as intimately familiar with the story as I am now. And one of the things that really strikes me about Travis's story is that he is talking about, races and creatures and beings that, people back then weren't really talking about. But now, the reports of these encounters has grown exponentially, and they all seem to corroborate what he was saying way back then. All the way down to the humanoids, to the creatures that came to gray aliens, and the descriptions of the crafts and the things that he saw. You could say, well, yeah, he made all that up. But the truth is, to me, there are so many more stories about this stuff, all told in different ways, but having these unifying threads that tells you that there's something to it. And he was one of the first ones to bring these images into the collective consciousness. And so, that plus, having gotten to know Travis, I get it. This really happened. And it's a heck of a story.
It really is. And, one of them we brought up earlier talking about is, we talked about earlier is the Rendlesham Forest, a little bit about that. We touched on that, I should say. And to me, that's another one that is just an amazing story and the absolute most convoluted story of anything I think there is out there. In other words, there's a lot of he said that, no, he didn't, and, that going on constantly. And a bit of a riff here and there, but I still think it's a real solid case.
Yeah, absolutely. And, the fact is it's almost like if there was nothing to it, then why all the cover-up? Why all the obvious cover-up? Why all of the efforts to keep it covered up? And the disappearing film and the discrepancies and the drugs. And, I mean, it's just like, it's almost like saying, well, nothing happened, and that's why we have to make such a big deal out of it. It makes no sense. See, the military, the government, people are keeping these secrets. They do this to themselves all the time. And you have to wonder, are they really trying, are they so inept that they think we're going to believe that Roswell was crash dummies? Or are they just, in a way, giving up and saying, well, nobody's this stupid. If you tell them this, and they're going to know we're lying, and they'll know that the stories out there have truth to them, and that's the best we can do right now. It's almost like, are they, I say at the end of one of my clips that are in the Bigger Question show, could it be that we're getting disclosure by the veracity of the lies? And it's a question worth considering.
Wow. I'm going to tell a little bit behind the fourth wall here to the listener out there. I think it was about maybe last November or October, I mentioned online briefly when I had someone on, I'm trying to remember the guest, that I met Charles Halt down in North Carolina, and in the general conversation, he admitted that he was also drugged. And Robert Hastings, who has helped the show out for a long time, actually listened to the show and started emailing me, that's not true, and, you know, all this. And then he got a hold of Charles Halt, and Charles said, no way, I never said that. And and I said, no, you know, I stood right there, and I heard him say that, you know, he didn't realize it until years later. And, you know, he told the whole story. And, you know, then he was in complete denial about it. Well, Robert Hastings got really, really angry at me and won't talk to me anymore. He's gone. He's out of the picture. But I was communicating with Charles Halt through all this. And I said, listen, here's my phone number. Please call me. Let's talk. So Charles Halt calls me, and I said, Charles, right now, if you took any type of lie detector you want, and I'm getting some feedback there, Ron. Took any type of lie detector or whatever, I'm going to say this, and it's going to come back that I'm telling the truth, because you said this to me. And he said, can we do this? He said, I believe that you are telling what you think is the truth. But he said, I did not say that. We ended up, we patched things up enough to the point where he actually came on the show like the month after that. So it was interesting, but I never brought it up during the show. But I'm just giving the listener of Hour 2 just a little behind the scenes of what happened.
You know, it's really a shame that, because, you know, that kind of puts you in a situation where no matter how much in integrity you try to be, you find yourself in a situation where your integrity can be questioned. And you just have to be really careful, don't you?
Oh, yeah. You know, I mean, I was threatened by Robert Hastings about libel and, you know, all this other stuff. So, but, you know, I was glad that he and I more or less ironed it out, but I still, I'm not going to go any further than, you know, I thought that's what I heard. So I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah, well, you know, it's a minefield, especially in this genre, because there's so many people with an interest in disinformation, and there's so many people that want to see us turn into just a bunch of backbiting, infighting people and lose all of our credibility. And you have to be aware of that constantly. And so, you know, all I ever hope for in this field is that the bickering can stop and that everybody can unite and come up with some professional standards of conduct and come up with some professional standards of investigation and some serious peer review, you know, because the field of ufology, if you want to call it that, a lot of people don't like that, the field of ufology is a dysfunctional crowd at the moment. And until we can really get this organized, you know, it's hard for us to unify and have the world take it seriously. And so, you know, that's one of the reasons that I'm supportive of the political movement in all of this, is because at least it has some cohesive parameters that it operates within. And so we all need to just bring our A game and quit fighting amongst ourselves and quit trying to discredit each other. And when there's things like pictures of mummies that are going to be rolled out in front of the world. We should have a much bigger peer review before something like that is allowed to be shown.
Yeah, hang on. We have a caller. Caller, identify yourself if you would, and please ask your question.
Long-time listener, first-time caller.
All right, who's
this?
this?
It's Matthew.
Oh, hey, how you doing, Matthew?
Excellent. I would like to know from our guest what's the best way to obtain his content. I know Jeremy Corbell was on recently, but if he could kind of repeat that, what the best value is. And then a follow-up comment just is, I didn't mean that his work wasn't valuable. I just was wondering, for the purpose of disclosure, since that's the huge goal, if his hard work would be more fruitful if it's viewed by those who are actually interested in the field versus sending them to random Congress people that more than likely is not interested.
Well, the fact of the matter is that making the material free to somebody who's going to digest it in their armchair at home in Wichita is not the best use of resources. The Congress people may or may not be interested in disclosure, but when you're engaging the political process, they are the people that you must engage. If we thought that giving away the citizen hearing on disclosure on YouTube was going to create a national outcry where tens of thousands of people are going to demand from their politicians that this happen, and we're going to see demonstrations in the capitals of states demanding action, then we would certainly do it. But I don't think that would be the result. And so, the people, there's only a core audience, maybe 20,000 people around the world that would have enough interest in the citizen hearing on disclosure to buy it. And sooner or later, we've given away free clips of TV. We've done a lot of things to get the word out. But at the end of the day, it costs money to be in Washington. It costs money to stay in D.C. It costs money to pay a publicist. It costs money to knock on the doors of these Congress people. And if we're not getting that money from the fruits of the work that we've done, then where are we supposed to get it? So, if we thought, hey, let's put out the citizen hearing on disclosure and put a commercial in front of all of it asking everybody that watches it to send us a buck, nobody would send us a buck. So, unfortunately, the world we live in says that, it takes money to do your work. And so we put it out there. We live streamed it all over the world for $3. I don't know how much more public service we could have been. It cost us more than that just to pay the company that provided the bandwidth. So I feel like we've done our bit. And as far as Jeremy Corbell, he's part of CHD2. He was not involved in filming the citizen hearing. It kind of, I hear that he does say that, and it's a shame. But he had nothing to do with filming the actual event, and he had a little bit to do with helping to produce the DVDs that are for sale. And that's the only place to buy the official citizen hearing on disclosure DVD collection is from CHD2 Productions. And, that's perfectly fine.
Thank you for that question, Matthew. One of the things that I do recall, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Ron, is that when the citizen hearing was first getting formed, that there was a wealthy donor that donated $1 million. Am I getting that wrong?
Yeah, he didn't donate it. He invested it. And that money was invested, and that donor, as you want to call him, has a contract that says that he's entitled to get that money back. In fact, he is entitled to all of the proceeds from any sales and distributions of the citizen hearing on disclosure and the subsequent movie that is supposed to be made about the whole thing. So it wasn't that somebody came up and just said, here's $1 million.
I see.
That person expects to get his money back.
I see. So it was an investor, not a donor. That's where the...
Although he's turned into a donor.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of investors can do that. And but anyway...
Well, he hasn't done it voluntarily. He's done it because the media has been co-opted, and as much as we try to keep it off YouTube for free, and as much as people seem to think that we should just put it out there for free, we've been burned pretty bad on that.
Now, are you going to be involved in the movie part of it?
I think that the movie, from what I hear, the movie is just stagnant. A lot of money was lost on the citizen hearing on disclosure, and I don't think that there's this is a perfect example. It's like there's supposed to be this movie Truth Embargo that is supposed to be being made with the citizen hearing as its pivotal moment. And, the support for that is gone. And, that we would love to see that movie get made. I'm not personally involved in producing it, nor did I raise money or take money for making it. But at this point in time, it would appear that there are no resources to make this movie.
Oh, that's too bad. And
for all the people out there that are asking me, it gets back to the same thing. This is the result of what happens when people aren't willing to pay for the work that filmmakers make. They can't make their next film. The Truth Embargo is going to be an amazing movie, a milestone event, a theatrical release, quality film. And then the citizen hearing ended up on YouTube for free. Sales were nothing, and now we can't make the movie.
Wow. Okay. So I asked you earlier, what you had in the works and all that, but I don't recall you mentioning anything about what your future projects are. And if you did address that, I apologize. But let me just put it this way. Are there things out there that you are looking to do that you haven't embarked on really getting into yet?
No, my primary focus now is on Eyeballs TV, and it is a subscription-based website, and we're creating fantastic original media for people that don't mind shelling out a little bit of money every month so that they can have access to this stuff without ads and people trying to sell them toilet paper. And at the end of the day, there's enough people out there that appreciate that, and they spend their $8 a month, and we're making these original shows. And my show, Bigger Questions, is my passion. It's the show that I've always wanted to make, and it's getting better and better. And then all the other shows that I'm executive producing on Eyeballs, and these are programs that, like, oddly enough, see, this is an example. We live in a world where you would think that a channel called HGTV, that's Home and Garden Television, would just be running to put on a show about how people can raise their own food in their backyard and not have to use GMOs and not have to be subjected to pesticides and chemicals. But they can't, because they're getting their support from companies like Monsanto that make Roundup and other companies that have other agendas. So you can't get true media from the existing media because the whole system has been co-opted by corporate interest and advertising dollars. We believe that people want honest media that helps them solve problems and improve their lives and helps us as a society build a better future. At the same time, it's entertaining and it's fun to watch. And we believe that those people, the smarter among us, are willing to pay a few bucks to have access to that instead of being bombarded with the stuff that the mainstream media feeds us. So that's what we're doing with Eyeballs. And, we invite everybody to come be a part of it. It's a community. Yes.
It would be a whole different podcast, but I have to say I'm on board with you with that stuff. And I think we had someone disagree on the message board about it, but I'm on board with you on that because the study's not out there. I think the FDA is corrupt, but again, this is a different
it's a whole other podcast. What did somebody say on the message board? I can't see it.
I think it was something to do with that scientists say that GMO is actually good, that it will feed third world countries, but I know that that's been proven wrong.
The Monsanto scientist says that. Let me clarify that for the guy on the message board. They have made the GMOs largely to be Roundup resistant, and that's so that they can spray these crops with Roundup, but the crop plants will still grow. What's been happening in these third world countries is that the weeds are now becoming resistant to Roundup. So they've shown that Roundup is a carcinogen. They think it may even have something to do with autism that's happening. What they're saying is that in the near future, it could be 50% of our children born with autism. Roundup is prevalent all over the world, and they're finding all kinds of problems with it. The GMO crops are made to resist it, and so not only are we getting crops that have been genetically altered, we don't know what that effect is, but we're getting crops that are saturated in this herbicide, and they're going all the way through our systems and being impregnated into our cells.
Yeah.
And so that's just one example of how GMOs are proving to be a big problem.
Yeah. I again, this is really the wrong podcast for that, but I understand.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's no problem. I'm the one who actually
I'm probably the most apologetic guest you've ever had, huh? Well, sorry, I didn't mean to say that. Sorry about that. Sorry, I didn't mean to get so upset. Sorry, didn't mean to say that.
No, I think I've had a few of them on there, but anyway, no, it's that is interesting, and I'm glad you're out there talking about it. And but
so, do you want to hear something funny?
Is it UFO related?
Yeah, it's pretty UFO related. So, what I find prevalent in this field and in other fields too, cryptozoology, etc., and this one's a little more crypto, but it's the same thing, is what I call the Jesus is walking on water syndrome. And that is, Jesus is at my house today. He's in my backyard. He's walking on water in my swimming pool, but I can't really let anybody know or call the media because now is not the time. Right, so there's all these people that are saying that they've got this knowledge and this information, but it's not ready to be released to humanity, or for some kind of strange reason, they can't put their money where their mouth is improving. So I get a call from a guy, and he says, look, dude, I'm going to break this story to you. I want you to be the one who brings it to the world. Bigfoot is an interdimensional creature tied in with aliens from another planet, and they come through portals to come in and out of the earth, and there's some portals in Arkansas, okay, and Bigfoot has agreed to be interviewed, but you have to come to Arkansas, and we're going to make all this happen. And I'm like, cool, man, let me know when the plane ticket's there. And he says, well, no, you have to buy the plane ticket, and you have to pay for your crew to come out. And so I'll tell you what, I will arrange for you to have $1 million deposited in your checking account when I leave Arkansas with the Bigfoot interview, but I'm not buying the plane ticket. And the guy's like, well, and then he tells me that we can't bring the camera equipment into the dimensional portal because electronics don't work. And so I say, well, how about we just bring an old-fashioned camera with film because that doesn't have electronics. And so, here's a guy, and this is what we're dealing with every day. It's like, you want me to put my dime to fly to Bigfoot, fly to Arkansas, walk through an interdimensional portal and interview Bigfoot, and you're so sure it's going to happen that you would put a $200 plane ticket against a $1 million check? And that's what we're up against, is just a lot of people saying things that they can't validate and then not understanding why we don't believe them. So there's a lot of stuff getting lost in the mix. And that's my funniest story of how I've been approached by people with these crazy stories that just are unable to validate.
Are you familiar with the BLT research group? It's actually Rockefeller funded.
Mm-hmm. I'm not familiar with their work, but I know about the group.
Yeah. There's a question up on the message board, and I don't really want to harp on the GMO, but the question is, regarding GMO, have you researched any of the BLT research group studies on crop circles?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, and I don't know exactly what GMO had to do with that. Most corn is, 90% is or whatever, but...
Although, really, we really want to look forward to the day when we can have a BLT without having to worry about GMO tomatoes. So I think that it's a field that we really need to keep investigating.
Okay. Crop circles, is that something you've ever actually looked into?
Well, I've worked with Suzanne Taylor.
Oh, that's right. I forgot you said that, yes. Mm-hmm. So I have...
I don't have a qualified opinion that's I'm not any more of an expert than anybody else.
Yeah. It is kind of interesting why there'd be so many over in England, and a lot of, I think some of them are man-made. I don't know if all of them are. I have no idea. I really don't want to go in with my opinion either on that, because I've been on the fence on that whole topic for.
Well, I sat down with the guy that made Mirage Men. I can't remember his name, but we were talking right after the EPE Awards, and he's very familiar with that. And he says that the crop circles are all 100% man-made. But honestly, some of these things you can tell almost by the imperfections and the screwed up shapes when something's been fumbled through by people. But some of these crop formations are so mathematically perfect. I just don't see how even a skilled crew in the dark could be making them. So I think that there's probably a lot of hoaxes, but there's those few that come across that you just can't explain.
Right, yeah, it is. And there was a group that we're getting a little feedback. I don't know. It sounds like wind or something on your end. I'm not sure what it is, but there was one group that tried to make crop circles in the dark and a geometric, and they actually did a pretty darn good job, and they did it before the sun came up. I don't know if you've ever seen that documentary.
Yeah.
But yeah, that kind of like made me think a little bit about that, whether they, people really do have pretty good skill, and they say that they do make them. So. Yeah,
I've heard all of that. So it's again, I don't think that I think the question is still up for debate, but I think there's more of a logical explanation than not in a lot of these things. As much as I want to believe, like Fox Mulder, and I do believe in a lot of stuff, but I've seen enough stuff also to really try to not drink the Kool-Aid and really pay a dispassionate journalistic viewpoint to everything that I encounter.
Right. So moving along, we got about, maybe 10 or 15 minutes. If anyone would like to call in, we're on the line here with Ron James, and the call-in number is 603-967-4030. And if anyone has any questions on on our message board, feel free to ask our guests some questions. And what do you? Someone just posted. What do you think of the ancient alien theory?
I think that the show has gotten to the point where it kind of reaches. It's like, hey, in some far distant part of Ecuador, there's a stone that's a particular shade of green, not found anywhere else on the planet. It must be aliens. But I think after 6 seasons, they're reaching a bit. However, the ancient alien theory, there is a huge amount of evidence that the history of this planet and the history of humanity is far more complex and goes back way farther than anybody's willing to admit. And I think that, the government knows. I think the Smithsonian Institute is in possession of a lot of archaeological artifacts that point to a history that is not officially acknowledged. I think that there's a good case that there's been some sort of an extraterrestrial influence on our history and on our genetics, and that still continues today. So, yeah, I think that there's a lot of validity to that.
Yeah. The starter of that whole thing was Eric von Däniken, and I had him on the show. And, it's funny, I got a lot of email after that particular show, and someone said, why didn't you ask him this, or why didn't you push that, or all that? But, it's many stories I heard before, but he was a very pleasant man to talk to anyway.
I got to hang out with Eric at Contact in the Desert, and I told him, I said, Eric, because I was sitting next to him while he was doing all his book signings and everything, so I got to really hang out and talk. And I told him, I said, Chariots of the Gods is one of those movies that was pivotal for me in deciding to do this kind of work and actually deciding to pay attention to these kind of mysteries. And I just want to thank you. And he was like, yeah, thanks. I've written 30 books since then. Have you read any of those? And I hadn't. And it's just like, oh, sorry, dude. No, but really, Chariots of the Gods was, what else did you need?
Yeah.
But I think it was one of the best-selling books of all time. I can't remember what the statistics are, but it's right up there with the Bible.
Is that right? And I think he just barely got that thing published too, and I think he got it. He was in some type of trouble right after that first came out, I believe, but he just barely got through that, and it totally changed his life for sure. Yeah,
it was a pivotal work. And, it established his career. And then, of course, years later, coming back and doing The Ancient Aliens with Giorgio and David Childress, it's picking it up. So, yeah, I love the show. I think that, it's really difficult to fill all those seasons of TV with fresh, exciting new material. But the premise that they built the show on is rock solid.
Yeah. This has absolutely never happened to me before, but Ron, you're going to be the first one this has ever happened to, but I have to let my dog out, and my dog needs to go out. And so I'm going to ask you a question, and if you'll just fill a little bit of time, if you would, I'd appreciate that. Sure. I'll be real quick. But what is your favorite UFO case that you can recall of all time? And go ahead and talk about that, and I'll be right back.
That's an interesting question, because there's so many UFO cases that are not as widely reported. And I think the one that intrigues me the most are the ones that come from pre-flight history. So the UFO crash in Texas, where the flying objects hit the windmill and the being is supposedly buried. It's really interesting because A, it was documented in newspapers and journalism, and B, there's a whole thing about witnesses and burned bodies and an alien being that wasn't from this world. Lots of eyewitnesses, lots of documentation. And then, of course, as time progresses, there is some evidence of cover-up and people going and removing stuff and doing everything they can to eliminate the evidence. So, that is one of the most intriguing UFO cases that I think we have on our plate that we don't really spend a lot of time talking about. And then, there's some Russian UFO cases that are pretty intriguing. But then, back to America, I think the Kenneth Arnold sighting really deserves to be revisited.
Me too. I'm back, by the way.
Oh, cool. But, I was running out of things to say.
Yeah, that's a classic.
You're gonna have to get an expert to answer that question.
That was a classic. That's the first time that's ever happened. But yes, last week I played a clip of a Kenneth Arnold interview. But yeah, that not a lot of people consider it the very first sighting. Of course, it's not. But sure. The one that the question, I answered the question earlier about the Texas UFO crash into the windmill. It was pre-flight. Oh, that happened in Texas?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I got to tell you that was and UFO hunters. They did a real thorough investigation of that, and which was quite amazing. And they actually found that they think it was some type of war spy dirigible type of thing, because they found evidence to corroborate that. So I think that one in particular, I don't want to say has been debunked, but was discovered to be something more prosaic, I guess.
Well, because I don't even think they had functional dirigibles back then. The true believers would tell you that stuff was just planted later on by the disinformation people that came in to wipe the area. Yeah,
it had to do with them. I think what they did. Well, I don't know. Anyone that wants to check into that, they can send something on the message board if they know something about that, or talk about it. But I think that was one, and I want to say that was Bill Burns and the UFO UFO hunters, not chasing UFOs, which is.
Right.
Speaking of that, have you ever spoken to James Fox, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. He's someone I've been trying. If someone out there is listening and they know how to get a hold of him, I had other people reach out to him, Ray Stanford and a bunch of other people reach out to him to get him on the show. I'd like to get James Fox on the show. Before I hang up my microphone, I'd really like to have him on. He's a great guy. I know he wasn't really happy with chasing UFOs with
sure.
What happened on the cutting room floor of the editing and stuff. He was pretty disappointed in that. But I think he is really solid, and I want to find out what's going on with 701. Do you happen to know anything about it?
There's still, the word is around town, and Chris O'Brien's involved in it a little bit, and so he talks to Tracy. It's plodding along, and, James is a hard guy to pin down for this kind of stuff. Getting him to show up for an interview or call you back, he's a great guy and he makes great films. But I haven't, sometimes he might take a really long time to get back to you, probably because he's so busy.
Yeah, I consider his Oh, boy, I just lost the title of it. I consider his...
I Know What I Saw?
I Know What I Saw, and there was the other one he did, kind of the follow-up after that. I think it's the best UFO-related movie of all time so far, myself. Best documentary on UFOs. It's just I can't remember I'm not doing too good tonight. Yeah, I can't wait till that 701 does come out, because I'm sure with the quality of work that he does, it's going to be a really good film.
Yeah, absolutely.
And let's see. So we have about I'm going to say we have about 3 minutes, I think we have left. So if you want to go over your... Oh, Out of the Blue, that's the name of it. Out of the Blue.
Oh, right, sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if you'd like to go over quickly one more time about your website and how someone can find you, and also if you want friends on Facebook, any of that stuff, go ahead if you would.
Well, sure. The website is evolvetv.com, so it's spelled just like the word evolve, only it starts with an I. So it's evolvetv.com, and that's where you can find pretty much a collection of my work with a lot of other filmmakers in the field. And a lot of original programming is coming down the pike. And, there's some free stuff on there, but mostly if you really want to enjoy the site, you have to either pay per view for movies or subscribe. And
okay.
I know that's unpopular, but we're delivering a lot of really cool stuff that you're not going to find on YouTube, not yet anyway.
Yep. All right. Well, I just found out that we're at the end of our show, and I want to thank you very much for coming on the show today.
Well, thank you. It was a real pleasure, and I hope that your listeners enjoyed it, and I appreciate having the opportunity to expound on several issues.
Sure. All right. So thanks, everyone, for helping out with the show today. Alejandro Rojas with the news, and our guests, of course, Ron James, and Peggy Shunning for managing the Facebook page. Remember, you can like us on Facebook for all the latest UFO news. And next week we have Peter Davenport on. I've been trying to get him on for a long time, and he should be fun. So check us out live if you want to listen to the whole show or support the show, to listen to the second part. And on the Dark Matter Radio Network, you can see us next week, the same time, same place. Keep your eyes to the sky.